I'd now like to welcome our witnesses. We have Lieutenant General Jamie Spicer Blanchette, Commander, Royal Canadian Air Force. We have Peter Hammerschmidt, Assistant Deputy Minister, Infrastructure and Environment. Jonathan Quinn, Director General, Continental Defense and Advanced Capabilities. And Neil O'York, Director General, Fleet and Maritime Services, the Canadian Coast Guard. I'll now invite Jonathan Quinn to make your opening statement, and you have up to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and committee members, for the opportunity to speak with you today about NORAD modernization and continental defense. My name is Jonathan Quinn, Director General for Continental Defense Policy at the Department of National Defense. So I'm responsible for several defense policy files, including continental defense, the Arctic, the Canada-U.S. defense relationship, and the military use of advanced capabilities such as space and cyber. It has been clear for some time that the world is becoming a more dangerous place and that Canada is not protected by its geography today in the same way it once was. In 1958, Canada and the United States created NORAD, which remains the only binational military command of its kind in the world, because our leaders at the time recognized that the best way to defend our shared continent from aerospace threats is to do it together. That remains the case today, especially as those threats become more and more sophisticated and the geopolitical environment more and more volatile and complex. In Canada, we've been on a path for a number of years now to dramatically enhance our domestic and continental defense capabilities, including through NORAD. In 2017, the government released Strong, Secure, Engaged, a defense policy that committed to several major procurement investments, with many relevant to the defense of Canada and North America. This includes River-class destroyers, Arctic and offshore patrol ships, future fighters, maritime patrol aircraft, and remotely piloted aircraft systems. Many of these projects are beginning to come online. Then, in 2022, the government announced a new package of investments specifically focused on modernizing Canada's contributions to NORAD. La modernisation du NORAD vise à fournir les capacités essentielles pour contrer les menaces pesant sur l'Amérique du Nord, telles que les missiles de croisière avancés et les armes hypersoniques. Le radar transhorizon de l'Arctique est un de nos programmes phares et constituera l'épine dorsale du nouveau système de systèmes pour détecter et suivre les menaces dans nos approches nordiques. Outre ces investissements dans de nouveaux capteurs, la modernisation du NORAD fournira des systèmes de commandement et de contrôle à la pointe de la technologie pour appuyer la prise de décision rapide et efficace, des armements aériens, d'importants investissements dans les infrastructures et les capacités de soutien opérationnel, particulièrement dans l'Arctique, et du financement dédié à la science et à la technologie pour la défense continentale. Voici quelques étapes clés à venir concernant ces projets. Un premier système de radar transhorizon de l'Arctique devrait être mis en service en 2029. La livraison des avions de transport et de ravitaillement à multirôles entièrement convertis est prévue pour 2027. Bien que ces investissements dans la modernisation du NORAD soient très ciblés, ils appuieront les objectifs plus larges de la défense du Canada. Cela comprend le renforcement des capacités des forces armées canadiennes dans nos régions nordiques et arctiques. La publication de la politique Notre Nord fort et libre en 2024 s'appuyait sur ces annonces antérieures pour financer des investissements supplémentaires axés sur la défense du Canada et de l'Arctique. The Northern Operational Support Hubs, airborne early warning and control aircraft, tactical helicopters to replace our current fleet, and maritime sensors are capabilities that will expand the CAF's ability to operate across our vast northern geography. R&R Strong and Free also committed to acquiring new ice-capable patrol submarines to provide a strategic deterrent effect on all three coasts. This most recent defense policy also committed to strengthening our contribution to integrated air and missile defense. In July 2025, the government announced that it had removed all restrictions on the air and missile defense of Canada, allowing us to consider the full range of capabilities Canada may need to effectively defend against rapidly evolving threats. Around the same time, the Prime Minister announced at the last NATO summit that Canada would reach the NATO benchmark to spend 2% of GDP on defence this fiscal year, and committed to reach the new 5% target by 2035. This announcement came with an immediate injection of $81 billion over 5 years to fortify the foundations of Canada's defence readiness by, for example, investing in infrastructure, people, core fleets, and strengthening our digital and cyber foundations. Then in September 2025, the Canadian Coast Guard moved into the Department of National Defence, along with a proposed adjustment to the CCG mandate through Bill C-12 that would allow them to make important contributions to Canada's maritime domain awareness. This will be especially valuable in the Arctic, where the Coast Guard's unique capabilities and year-round presence will significantly enhance our ability to monitor our northern approaches and deter unwanted activity. My colleague Neil O'Rourke can speak more to that should there be any questions. Collectively, all this means that national defence is prioritizing the procurement of capabilities to deter and defend against threats to Canada and North America, particularly threats in, to, and through our Arctic, and has a plan to modernize our capabilities for the all-domain defence of Canada. I anticipate that the defence of Canada, our Arctic and North America will continue to feature prominently in future defence policy announcements and investment plans as we move deliberately to increase defence spending over the coming decade. Thank you, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn. First round of questions up to 6 minutes. We'll start with our Vice Chair, Mr. James Bazan.
And before you start the clock, just want to raise a point of order over the notice of this meeting only went out late on Friday, just saying government officials were going to appear. I understand that government officials knew Friday that they were going to appear late on Friday. We as committee members didn't know who was appearing before committee until 9:22 this morning. Gives us a little time to prepare. Government officials is broad sweeping group of individuals across the Canadian Armed Forces and the Department of National Defence. It could have been anyone from the commander of NORAD operations to CDS down to a wing commander at Cold Lake. So we do have to raise that we need proper notice so that we can prepare and make sure that we're not wasting the time of witnesses or time of this committee and members to ask the questions that need to be asked in this study. So I just would caution the chair to make sure that he's respecting the rights of members here so that we are properly prepared and can do our jobs in a timely manner, and today is not.
Point well taken. Back to you, Mr. Bazan.
Okay, I'll start. So I want to thank our witnesses for appearing on very short notice. But this is a study that's important to Canada, knowing the growing threats that we see in our Arctic and around the world. Want to just start off quickly, just talking about, there was again a comment made by Ambassador Hoekstra to CBC that if Canada doesn't buy the F-35s, that the U.S. will then have to pick up the slack and fly their F-35s in Canadian airspace to intercept any potential threats. So if I can talk to General Spicer-Blanchette as to her position on can we maintain our sovereign control of airspace without F-35s?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So I would offer that Canadian presence in NORAD absolutely reduces the risk and increases Canada's autonomy and ability to defend itself. The F-35 is one of the capabilities that Canada has decided to procure, in addition to several others that are part of an overall system of integrated air and missile defense that will ultimately strengthen Canada's ability to
So the F-35, though, would be the most interoperable from the fighter jet platform requirement that we would have, and would be the best one to put Canadian pilots in to protect themselves and protect Canada?
So the F-35 is the only fifth-generation advanced technology fighter aircraft available to Canada, and was selected in the competition that was conducted by the Government of Canada. And it is the only one at this moment that can meet all of the most advanced adversary threats that we are seeing that are being promulgated and advanced technologically from Russia and from China.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We know that we're buying a minimum of 16 F-35s. The infrastructure to support those F-35s continue to be behind schedule, whether it's the extension of the runway at Inuvik, whether it is the added security needed, both cybersecurity and physical security at our wings and forward operating locations. When can we expect those projects to be completed so that we can receive our F-35s to protect Canadian airspace and be a proper partner in NORAD?
So, Mr. Chair, I can start and then hand over to my colleague, the Associate Deputy Minister of Infrastructure and Environment. At the moment, we do have within the Future Fighter Capability Program very clear objectives and milestones for all of the associated infrastructure required to support the F-35 fleet. There are interim capabilities and structures and construction that are meant to mitigate some of the delays for the permanent fighter fighter squadron facilities that are meant to be finished in the early 30s. So when the first F-35 is due to arrive in Canada, in Cold Lake in 2028, we do expect to have sufficient interim infrastructure available to be able to operate those F-35s.
But only at Cold Lake. Would they be able to work out of our FOLs in Nunavik, in Yellowknife, in Iqaluit?
So there will be a growth program. It is implementing in phases. So obviously to reach an initial operating capability, not everything will be operable immediately. And we will still be operating the F-18s as we draw them down at the same time that we build up the F-35 capability until 2032. So we will absolutely ensure that we have ability to operate from our forward operating locations.
So from the Air Force standpoint, I believe that also the P-8s are going to require the same type of security measures at every wing. What have the Royal Canadian Air Force been doing to enhance the security of the perimeter and the wings across Canada so that F-35s and the Poseidons can operate?
Mr. Chair, we have been working within the RCAF to address those very important security requirements, physical security at our wings and bases across Canada. We are already developing options for increased security forces and looking at the kinds of capabilities they will need to be able to provide that physical protection of very important assets. We have developed and are already working with some counter UAS systems that are in place and being continuing to be developed in certain locations across Canada. And we will continue all of those efforts so that we can provide the necessary security for all of the modern capabilities that we will be procuring, including the F-35, the P-8, the remotely piloted aircraft system as well.
When we look at any incursions into Canada's, into our air identification zones or into our maritime space, do they predominantly occur in the western or eastern Arctic?
I don't know if I have an actual quantifiable answer to that. We respond to all of the incursions and are prepared to respond east or west. At the moment, I think the predominant Russian threat would be more from the eastern side of the Arctic. However, we work within NORAD to respond across the entire geography that we have.
I assume that most of it would have been, and I was led to believe that most of the incursions were actually happening in the western Arctic from coming across over top of Alaska out of the Bering Strait, and then of course, also, the maritime threat seems to be coming from that direction, especially as we see more and more Chinese vessels in our in the Arctic waters. So, wouldn't the need for a Nunavik in particular to link that runway become a major priority?
Do you want to cover that?
Sure. Thank you for the question. Certainly on Inuvik, we recognize that we need to make some infrastructure improvements quickly there. And in fact, as you noted, the runway work is underway. It is a bit delayed because there is some permafrost issues that have to be dealt with. And so we're taking the appropriate amount of time to get that done. But there is a broader effort to ensure that in particular, the Inuvik and the Yellowknife forward operating locations start to see some injection of construction and infrastructure investment in the very near term. And we will shortly thereafter be focusing focusing on Iqaluit and the deployed operating base at Goose Bay as well. So there is activity happening. The construction program is going to launch shortly for those forward operating locations.
Thank you. Ms. Vivian Lapointe, you have up to 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Quinn, you mentioned in your opening statement that several defense investments are about to come online. Can you share some details of those with the committee?
Yes, absolutely. I'd be happy to do that. And I'll start. And given that a lot of the investments are Air Force related, I would maybe invite General Spicer-Blanchette to amplify as well. So from a NORAD modernization perspective, there's a huge focus on domain awareness. So we have Arctic over-the-horizon radar that's set to come online based in southern Ontario in 2029. Polar over-the-horizon radar system, which would be physically located in the high Arctic, that would come online a little bit after that. There's still a little bit more research and development to do to deal with some interference from the auroral oval in that part of the world. Additional sensors as well that we call them crossbow. Those are a bit more sensitive, so we won't be able to get into details on what those are at the moment. Also, really significant investments in command and control. So with all of that data coming in from new and existing sensors, we need to enhance our ability to digest it using artificial intelligence, machine learning, and translate that into operationally useful information that will reduce decision time in the event of a crisis. In addition to that, we're investing in air-to-air refuelers to extend the range of our fighter aircraft. Really significant investments as well in our northern infrastructure that Mr. Hammerschmidt could speak to in more detail. More recently, in Our North Strong and Free, we're investing as well in underwater maritime sensors and uncrewed underwater vehicles to make sure that we don't have blind spots in the underwater approaches to Canada and the Arctic as well. Airborne early warning and control aircraft, which is a real priority capability for NORAD in terms of commanding and controlling other fighter aircraft from the air. And providing additional early warning capability as well. We're putting in a new Arctic ground station to enhance the collection of intelligence in the Arctic, space projects as well, both for polar communications and surveillance from space. And as well, as you know, there's a project underway to replace our submarine fleet with a new fleet, and that is progressing really well. So those are a few examples, but I would maybe invite, if there's time, General Spicer-Blanchette to amplify if I've missed anything.
So in fact, that was a fairly thorough list of that isn't as much to add on. However, I would emphasize the space projects that were mentioned. So the Enhanced Satellite Communications Project, Polar, and the Defense Enhanced Surveillance from Space Project, which are key contributions and very cutting edge in terms of what Canada is going to be able to contribute to its own defense and certainly continental defense with world-class capabilities. The Future Combined Air Operations Center capability speaks to the command and control that Mr. Quinn mentioned, because as we know, the defense of North America is about much more than just the air platforms that we're flying. It's very, very important to be able to enable those aircraft to communicate. It's about sensing threats and detecting them. So the domain awareness that he mentioned is very much key, and many of the projects are designed to enhance our ability to sense and detect threats, then decide from a communication standpoint what must be done about them, and then have the necessary effectors to be able to ultimately defeat those threats and provide the credible deterrence that is necessary to protect North America.
Lieutenant General, are there lessons from some of the recent global conflicts that we're seeing and crises that have helped directly shape how NORAD modernization is being implemented today? You talked about the need to detect threats ahead of time. That might be part of the answer. But are there lessons that we have learned and are looking at as we modernize NORAD?
Thank you for the question. So I would say there are many, many lessons, not the least of which we need to be able to modernize rapidly to keep pace with the speed with which adversaries are evolving their capabilities. And certainly the investments have to balance the operational necessities and autonomy, but there is much value to be working with allies and partners. So I think that Canada has tremendous opportunities and is on a path right now in the current NORAD modernization efforts to be able to meet those adversary threats and to increase strategic autonomy and, in concert, ability to work with allies and partners, which is going to be very key as we see what is happening around the world. There's much uncertainty and increased volatility, and that's the environment that we need to be planning for.
For my next question, I invite any and all panel members to contribute to the response. Canadians are very anxious about the current geopolitical landscape. So from your perspective, what should Canadians be most confident about when it comes to Canada's approach to NORAD modernization over the next decade?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the question. Maybe I can start and invite other panelists to weigh in as well. I think Canadians can be confident that we're taking the threat environment, the security environment very seriously. We understand the urgency of enhancing our ability to detect threats to the continent, to Canada, to deter them with credible capabilities, and also to defeat any threats that do end up materializing when deterrence fails. I think the investments that we've outlined and the path that the Department of National Defence and Canadian Armed Forces are on demonstrates that seriousness. And I think Canadians should take comfort and be confident that we're moving really aggressively along that path to enhance our capabilities as quickly as possible.
Thank you. We're going to the next question. Mr. Savard-Tremblay, you have 6 minutes.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président. Alors, bonjour tout le monde. Excusez-moi ma voix qui est je ne sais pas trop si c'est une fin, un début ou un milieu de rhume. Dans tous les cas, je suis prêt avec. Alors, pardonnez-moi ma voix et j'invite fortement l'équipe à désinfecter mon micro à la fin de cette séance. Alors, bonjour tout le monde. Merci d'être là. C'est notre première séance, donc, en ce début d'année. Il y a un débat au Québec quant à savoir jusqu'à quand on a le droit de se souhaiter bonne année. Comme c'est la première fois qu'on se voit, on va se le souhaiter, je crois. Alors, bonjour, c'est un plaisir de vous retrouver en ce comité. Pourriez-vous, merci également aux témoins pour votre présence et pour vos présentations, pourriez-vous nous parler, s'il vous plaît, des capacités industrielles du Québec, puis je pense en particulier à Saint-Hubert et à Valcartier, en matière, je pense que c'est des capacités industrielles qui sont assez clés. Est-ce qu'il y a une stratégie industrielle qui ciblerait spécifiquement les capacités québécoises?
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Avec la nouvelle stratégie pour l'industrie de défense, Defense Industrial Strategy, qui est en développement avec le gouvernement, il y a plusieurs aspects qui vont bénéficier l'industrie canadienne en général de défense. Il y a beaucoup d'opportunités pour le Québec. Je ne peux pas parler spécifiquement d'une stratégie uniquement ciblée vers le Québec, mais je peux vous dire du côté aérospatial, nous avons beaucoup d'opportunités parce qu'il y a beaucoup de talents et d'aspects d'innovation que certaines des industries au Québec peuvent fournir lorsque nous développons les besoins et les capacités pour l'aviation et nos besoins de l'espace futur.
Oui. Par exemple, spécifiquement, l'hypersonique, on sait qu'au Québec, il y a une spécialisation, il y a une expertise, puis on sait que ça va être l'avenir. Pourriez-vous développer sur ce volet-là aussi spécifiquement?
Pour les missiles hypersoniques ou...
En fait, de la base, j'en comprends qu'il y a des grappes de recherche qui ne se limitent pas aux missiles, mais qu'on fouille en général le secteur. Là.
Oui. Donc, je dirais que nous explorons beaucoup d'innovations et de technologies futures, inclus hypersoniques, inclus le développement des drones et des capacités de 6e génération. Alors, ça peut être dans le sens des capteurs, des sensors, qui font parmi les composantes de toutes sortes d'appareils, mais les technologies ne sont pas limitées. Alors, l'intelligence artificielle, l'interaction entre machines et humains, il y a beaucoup d'opportunités et oui, nous allons découvrir et prendre avantage de tous les possibilités.
Parce qu'il y a plusieurs experts ici nous ont parlé du manque de préparation, d'infrastructures et de technologies au Canada contre les missiles hypersoniques. Donc là, on en parle comme opportunité de développement ici, certes, mais il faut aussi penser à la préparation par rapport à des éventuels missiles, à une attaque éventuelle. Donc dans ce cas-là, là, vous me dites, on est en train de penser que les capteurs, une modernisation qui permettrait de répondre à... Puis l'intelligence artificielle, bon, vous avez donné des exemples, qui permettrait de répondre à cette menace-là. Mais est-ce qu'il y a des investissements? Est-ce qu'il y a un plan qui est en cours par rapport à ça?
Je dirais que ça fait partie du gros plan en général. Alors, pour ce qu'il y a des capacités actuelles et le plan de projet et d'initiative actuellement en cours, ça va nous placer pour justement pouvoir mieux intégrer des compagnies canadiennes pour regarder toutes ces options-là.
Puis, je vais vous poser une question qu'on ne pensait pas se poser aussi. Est-ce qu'il y a une surveillance? Puis, je ne sais pas si ça va être vous ou si ça va être d'autres, mais parce qu'on sait que les relations sont plus tendues maintenant avec notre voisin du Sud. C'est moins stable que ça l'était. Ça demeure un allié pareil, il faut le préciser. Mais donc, la majorité des capacités de surveillance et de défense sont concentrées sur la frontière nord. Il y a eu, dans les dernières semaines, il y a eu beaucoup de sensationnalisme autour du plan visant à contrer une invasion américaine, alors qu'on se doute que toute armée au monde va avoir ça de toute façon. C'est rien de nouveau. C'est pas parce qu'on se prépare sérieusement à ça. J'espère qu'on peut tout de suite dégonfler la balloune. Bon. Mais cette chose étant dite, est-ce qu'il y a quand même quelque chose qui se prépare par rapport à la frontière sud? Je ne sais pas si ça va être vous ou si ça va être d'autres, mais...
Je pense que c'est...
Merci pour la question, Monsieur le Président. Here, I would just say we're obviously very aware of the political dynamics and some of the hyperbole that's out there. But what I would stress is that we continue to have an extremely constructive relationship, both on the military side and on the civilian side, both in Colorado Springs. Through NORAD, but also with the Pentagon, and are in regular contact with our U.S. allies about how to work together for the defense of the shared continent, and that remains the big priority. Thank you.
Donc, vous n'êtes pas du tout en train de dire on est en train de voir le Sud comme la nouvelle menace, on déploie tout, on passe ce qui était du Nord, on envoie ça au Sud, puis c'est maintenant l'extrême urgence. Au contraire, vous confirmez qu'il y a encore de la collaboration, là.
Thank you again for the question, Mr. Chair. Absolutely, we're not focused on a military threat from the southern border. Really, the focus continues to be collaborating with our U.S. allies in the defense of the shared continent. Thank you.
Donc, comme on le dit au Québec, le bonhomme 7 heures peut aller se coucher. Combien de temps me reste-t-il?
You're out.
Bon, merci. À tout à l'heure.
You have up to 6 minutes. Or, sorry, 5 minutes.
So with respect to the over-the-horizon radar, where are the installations going to be in Ontario, and why are they going to be there, as opposed to existing installations that are already owned by D&D?
Thank you for the question. So the search for appropriate locations for the radar was an exhaustive search. The requirements are very inflexible and complicated, and we assessed in total over 500 sites since 2022, and we started with D&D lands and landed on the locations that are identified in Kawartha Lakes Township and Clearview Township.
Okay, how long is the existing north warning system going to be operational? So I'm looking at what gap exists between once that's up and running, the one in Ontario, and the ones that are up and running now.
I can start, and thank you for the question. I can start and perhaps pass it to General Spicer Blanchette. The North Warning System continues to be operational. In terms of over time, we will reassess that capability and the individual stations to determine which ones can continue to perform and contribute to the overall system of systems for surveillance for North America.
Okay. The U.S. ambassador to Canada said that recently if we weren't going to buy the F-35s, then the U.S. would have to fill in the gaps we have left. Can you explain what those gaps that would be left behind would be if we were to cancel the F-35s for an inferior fighter jet?
For the question, Mr. Chair. So right now, the gaps that we are addressing with NORAD modernization are focused a lot on the radar systems that we've been speaking of. And so as mentioned, the North Warning System does provide a certain coverage, and then the Arctic over-the-horizon radar will actually fill in a very wide swath in addition to that. There will also be more ability from the space side to be able to detect. The fighter capability is as a fifth-gen fighter, the F-35 provides the lethality and survivability against the known threats that are being developed by adversaries, and therefore those the gaps that would be created would simply be related to the technology that the adversaries are developing that we would not have at hand.
Okay, with respect to data infrastructure and communications infrastructure, and there are new systems that need to be brought up. What stage of the contracts are there at with respect to the radio and data links? Have there been tenders put out for the communications infrastructure in the Arctic yet? And not satellite, radio and data.
Thank you for
So
the
that the
question.
F-35s could operate if we get them.
Thank you for the question. I mentioned earlier the construction work that, the design and construction work that is going to start in the forward operating locations. That will include IM/IT upgrades to ensure that there's communications
Okay,
infrastructure in
so
place.
the question, Mr. Chairman, was about contracts. Have any been put out to tender yet? Has there been a request for proposals? Where are we at with actually getting this infrastructure in place?
So, Mr. Chair, I can expand somewhat on the RCF Air Communications Expansion project known as RACE, which covers part of that. There's no one contract that covers everything. It's certainly a combination of several factors. But this project will deliver modernized radio network to improve the performance and sustainability of many aspects of the Canadian air defense sector enterprise, and it is meant to be initial operational capability by 2031. So I don't have information on specific contracts. However, that is well in hand, and progress is being made on the projects, and an update could be provided separately.
Originally, the first Canadian delivery of the F-35 was supposed to be in 2026, but now it's 2028. Why that difference?
So, Mr. Chair, the first Canadian F-35 will be delivered in 2026 to Luke Air Force Base, and Canadian aircrew will start flying on it. The first Canadian F-35 that will be delivered to Canada and one of our wings is going to be in 2028 after a sufficient number of pilots and technicians have been trained and sufficient infrastructure is in place to support it in Cold Lake. The first phase is Cold Lake, and then subsequent years and developments will move and it will then be delivered to Bagotville.
Okay, so recently the commander of NORAD said that China and Russia have increased their cooperation in the Arctic, whether it be sea or air intrusions. How integrated is the operation and the cooperation of those two military forces, in your opinion?
Thank you for the question. They have not been... They've been working together, as we've seen, so it is absolutely important to be monitoring this kind of activity, and the fact that they're more joined up is something that is new. The level of cooperation is not something that seems to be particularly advanced, but at this moment it's very important for us to pay attention to all of the threats and all of the actions from our adversaries, and they are certainly advancing a lot of technologies very, very rapidly, and we are keen to keep pace with that and continue on with our NORAD modernization and continental defense projects to ensure that Canada is well postured to defend against them.
Thank you. Thank you. Monsieur Malat, you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, panel members, for attending today. Given that 8-wing CFB Trenton, which is, as I mentioned to General Spicer Blanchette, proudly in my riding of the Bay of Quinte, is the hub of RCF air mobility operations and provides strategic airlift, aerial refueling, and support to Arctic locations, such as CFS Alert. How do these missions contribute to Canada's role in the NORAD modernization effort? And specifically, how does Trenton support 2 Alert and other northern operations bolster continental deterrence and response capability? And I would ask that, I guess, to General Spicer-Blanchette, if I could.
Yes, thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Eight Wing certainly has a very important role, as you mentioned, and providing the strategic airlift that Canada does rely upon. Within a NORAD context, the Canadian aircraft are often used to assist in resupplying for Pituffik in Greenland and for the U.S. forces there. I would offer that even outside of Eight Wing, the Royal Canadian Air Force has many assets that continue to exercise with our NORAD partners on a routine basis, and the collaboration is very, very strong. The Canadian contribution is very positive and is quite solid and is seen as an important contributor.
Further to that, I guess on a more nuts and bolts question, is the existing infrastructure at Eight Wing and its alert unit, such as runways, hangars, fuel storage, command facilities, sufficient to support increased NORAD-related operational tempo vis-a-vis the pace and intensity of operations over time, I guess, is my question. Perhaps for Mr. Hammerschmidt as well.
Thank you for the question. I think there is a broad recognition that there needs to be a significant infusion of investment funding for infrastructure across all of our operating locations that support NORAD, and that was one of the key pillars of the NORAD modernization announcement and the funding that flowed from that. So places like Alert, they do need a lot of work on their runways and accommodations and fuel facilities and logistics, and Trenton too. And so we do have an active infrastructure program that is directing resources to all of those sites and bases across the country that support the NORAD mission. And with regard to Eight Wing in particular, we will start to see investment in the infrastructure that will support the Strategic Tanker Replacement Project, STTC, in the second half of this year. So we're going to get to see construction begin there soon.
Very good, thank you. This question is directed to Mr. Quinn. How has the threat environment facing North America, sir, changed in the last month or even the recent years, particularly with respect to Arctic and maritime approaches?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. I'll say a few words, and then I know General Spicer-Blanchette may have more to add on this one as well. I would say we have recognized for some time that the threat environment was changing fairly significantly, which is why we've been on a path, I would say, dating back to at least 2017 to really prioritize investments in domestic continental defense and NORAD modernization to deal with that evolving threat. In terms of specifics, much more sophisticated missile technology, so conventionally armed cruise missiles that have much longer range can reach North America from further away from various platforms, including submarines, other aircraft, and land-launched missiles. The idea of hypersonic weapons has come up already during the appearance today, so that's a significant threat. I would say as well, in addition to aerospace threats, we're seeing lots more activity in what we call the gray zone. So cyber threats to our critical infrastructure, cyber espionage, and that sort of thing is also a real concern. Not necessarily always a national defense lead to prepare for and to defend against that full range of threats, but we work very closely with our colleagues across the federal government to do that. But maybe, General, would you like to add anything to the threat environment?
Certainly, Mr.
Thanks.
Chair. Thank you. So, as mentioned, China and Russia have both demonstrated systems, hypersonic glide vehicles, long-range cruise missiles, fractional orbital concepts that are explicitly designed to evade North American warning systems. So these are driving the modernization efforts that contribute to NORAD modernization, continental defense, and allow us to reduce or to address the reduced warning time that comes with these advanced threats. In an era of strategic competition, all of the parties are developing and advancing their technologies to hold Western North America and Western allies at risk, and therefore that is, of course, driving us to address that and work on developing increasingly lethal capabilities so that Canada can continue to accelerate and modernize its ability to defend. A transition to interoperable fifth-generation capabilities will enable Canada to remain a reliable partner in NORAD and also, importantly, in NATO to contribute meaningfully to that collective defense.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Monsieur Savard-Tremblay, you have 2.5 minutes.
Merci. Avez-vous des échos quelconques? Parce on sait que l'équilibre géopolitique, il est perturbé, puis on n'arrête pas de parler, bien sûr, de la menace chinoise, de la menace russe dans l'Arctique. Quel est l'état des lieux, le dernier état des lieux concernant en fait, j'allais dire l'agitation, mais y a-t-il une agitation? Voyez-vous quelque chose se passer dans l'Arctique de leur côté? Est-ce qu'on a des indices? Est-ce qu'on voit des exercices? Est-ce qu'on voit des sorties aériennes? Est-ce qu'on voit que ça bouge dans leur base? Bref, quel est l'état des lieux?
Merci beaucoup pour la question, Monsieur le Président. Certainly, lots of activity, lots of interest in the Arctic, lots of dynamics at play, including the changing physical environment through climate change. So the Canada's north is warming at somewhere between 3 and 4 times the global average rate, which is changing the physical environment in ways that are increasing the amount of interest from potential adversaries in the region. So we are seeing more activity from China, from Russia, some dual-use activity as well, where there's scientific expeditions that can also inform governments about future military operations and that sort of thing. So it's something that we monitor extremely closely with existing capabilities, and that we're investing heavily in terms of enhancing those capabilities so that we can continue to keep up with the level of activity and interest in the north.
Maintenant aussi, concernant le Dôme d'Or, qui est une question, j'allais dire, qui vient sporadiquement. L'expression Dôme d'Or, c'est venu sous M. Trump. On en entend parfois parler. Ça a l'air d'être très intense dans le discours officiel, puis ça disparaît plusieurs mois. Mais c'est pas nouveau en soi comme concept. On en entend parler, la guerre des étoiles, depuis Ronald Reagan. Ça fait plus de 40 ans, là, donc il en est question. Là, actuellement, est-ce qu'il y a des discussions formelles là-dessus, ou on en est encore seulement à des déclarations publiques?
Merci encore pour la question, Monsieur le Président. So regarding integrated air and missile defense is what we tend to refer to that as in Canada. NORAD has been very actively involved in integrated air and missile defense for many years. A lot of the investments that we've been talking about today will continue to enhance Canada's contributions to that, particularly on the domain awareness side of things. Through our colleagues at NORAD, we're constantly in touch in terms of figuring out what the gaps are in defending against evolving threats, figuring out where Canada can add more value through capability investments. I would point out as well that in the most recent defense policy, Our North Strong and Free, the government committed to explore what more Canada can do with respect to integrated air and missile defense. So that's under active analysis right now, and we expect as we move forward to reach the new NATO 3.5% and 5% defense targets, that'll be a key focus and prioritization as we explore how to invest those additional funds.
Merci, Mr. Quinn. Mr. Anderson, you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. This question is for either Lieutenant General Spicer-Blanchet or Mr. Quinn. Can you give us an update on the 11 Sky Guardian drones in terms of the delivery?
So, Mr. Chair, I can say the remotely piloted aircraft system project is underway, and we are still working towards an initial operational capability in 2028, which would see the first one coming to Canada in approximately 2027. So right now, everything is on schedule, and The next work as we prepare for the capability is the personnel required. So we're looking at what training requirements are required to be able to generate the forces to be able to operate and, of course, sustain the Sky Guardians.
Okay, thank you. And in the context of their communications, especially satellite communications, are those hardened against EMP? Will they be?
Against electromagnetic
Yes.
pulses? So we will have the appropriate protection suites and electronic systems measures.
Okay, that is a yes then.
Yes.
Perfect. I know that we've talked about continental defense. Continental defense, the term itself implies a more geostrategic context because obviously there's defense against something. A lot of Canadians, I think, see the defense of Canada as sort of a castle that we fix our defenses without much regard for the external context. And I think it has to be looked at in a geostrategic context. And looking at it through that context, first of all, have we learned lessons from the Ukraine war? That would be to you,
So,
Lieutenant
yes.
General.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Of course, we have learned many lessons from the Ukraine war, and in fact, it is driving our analysis on how we will be operating more effectively in the future geostrategic environment, and how do we present military forces, and what does that mean? The proliferation of drones is something that is, of course, all of our allies are learning from that, and also there are a lot of lessons that have to do with how we engage our defense industrial base and how we better incorporate the ability to leverage innovation and more rapid production and acquisition. So I would say that there are many lessons and that we are absolutely working as quickly as we can to implement what is possible.
And would you say that we have benefited from our close association with Ukraine and our defense of Ukraine in gaining those lessons?
Mr. Chair, I believe it is safe to say so. We are working closely with our Ukrainian partners and Canada.
No, I guess my question may have been a bit unclear. What I'm saying is that we are not passive observers to this war. We are actually engaged in it in some sense. And I'm saying because of that engagement, are we actually learning something, or are we just learning it from watching it as passive observers?
My understanding is that we are learning from that engagement.
Thank you very much. With regard to the F-35, I think a statement has been referenced by the Americans that they will have to take over the defense, that aspect of the defense of Canada if we do not buy the F-35. I want to talk a little bit about that. In war games that we went to with senior military personnel here, the F-35 is, when it is used on the battlefield, in a battle space, the other side doesn't even get a turn because by the time the munitions released by the F-35 hit, the F-35 is back out of range again, never having been seen. I did have an opportunity to speak to another lieutenant general in the Air Force, and that's a very small club, at a recent conference, and I asked him for 2 points, or just give me a point, the reason we need the F-35, and he made 2 of them. One was an integrated comms and targeting system that is essentially point and shoot, which no other aircraft that we have has that. The other one is, to me, definitive, that the minute you strap a missile or an external fuel tank on a Gripen, it becomes visible to whoever can see it. F-35 is not in that same context. So we can confirm this for me. We cannot operate the Gripen in a forward operating position in the Arctic with any chance of success relative to the F-35, which I understand the pilot can look from inside the cockpit and see what external radar can see and trim the wings and trim the speed and so on to optimize that stealth capability. So I'm looking for confirmation that the F-35 can operate in a forward operating position, whereas the Gripen is going to have a lot of trouble doing that. Is that a fair statement?
If you're going to reply quickly, because we're running out of time.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I can confirm that the F-35 was selected due to advanced stealth capabilities, data sensor fusion, and increased lethality. So it has, with its advanced radars and detection systems, the ability to remain undetected and see further distances, to essentially engage before being detected, and also to integrate massive amounts of information from the battle space through the cockpit and be able to I guess, think more in terms of doing a lot of those calculations for the pilot. And all of these things have led to the F-35 being selected and being what would be necessary against adversary fifth-generation threats.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Sherry Arminato, you have up to 5 minutes.
Very much, Mr. Chair, and through you, I'd like to thank the witnesses for being here today. I want to start with Mr. O'Rourke. If we could talk a little bit about the integration of the Coast Guard into Department of National Defense and what that capability does to enhance our maritime awareness with respect to NORAD. If you could elaborate a little bit on that and the integration of the Coast Guard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. So there are really two big changes, I guess, that have kind of the integration, obviously, of Coast Guard moving over to national defense. But then there's Bill C-12 and what's being proposed, the language with regards to the Canadian Coast Guard taking on an evolved role in maritime security. So post C-12 Royal Assent, should it get there, essentially we will be able to take safety information and legally share it with security, intelligence, and defense partners to be able to help with the security and defense, including, you know, the NORAD modernization. If I talk a bit about the integration itself, obviously we are part of the defense team now. There's a lot of different reasons why we see that this is a good fit. Everything from Arctic operations to infrastructure to increased interoperability. And maybe what I do is just highlight a couple of very specific examples quickly of things that we've already done. So as an example, working with the Air Force, we have actually, they have done crew changes for us. So we typically every 4 weeks have to fly our crew to a location, bring the crew home. This is typically done through commercial airlines. Increasingly, that's becoming challenging to find availability, and so the Air Force has actually already helped us out in this regard. So that's a real kind of, you know, change just in the last couple of weeks. A lot of work around R&D and getting prepared for a possible eventuality of C-12 receiving Royal Assent, where we're looking at increasing sensor capabilities on our ships. And again, you know, being able to leverage the work DRDC and CAF has and is doing is very beneficial. And maybe the last one, I just talk about exchange of expertise. The Canadian Coast Guard has world-leading expertise in operating in ice, and that's something that we are sharing with our RCN and CAF partners. As an example, we've already had RCN folks come to our Coast Guard Academy to take some of our Ice Navigator courses. And as an example, in the coming weeks, we'll be joining some of our CAF and RCN members with the Chilean Navy, where they'll be sailing to Antarctica, and two of our commanding officers with significant ice experience will be along to help coach and mentor both RCN captains and members of the Chilean Navy.
Thank you. And I want to thank you for explaining clearly the fact that right now the Coast Guard cannot provide security information to our allies without that change in regulation in terms of the Fisheries and Ocean Act. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Thank you. My next question is for Mr. Quinn. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask the question that I think a lot of Canadians are curious about. Can you talk a little bit about the situation with Greenland and why this is, it's important that Canada stay firm with our partners on the defense of North America in terms of the NORAD context? If you could elaborate a little bit about what is going on right now.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. I would say, first and foremost, I would just start with, as the Prime Minister has said, that Canada supports the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Denmark, including Greenland, which must be respected in accordance with international law. We'll continue to work with Denmark, Greenland, and the United States, as we've been talking about today, to fulfill our shared responsibility for defense and security in the Arctic. In terms of the kind of notional framework arrangement that was discussed by President Trump and the NATO Secretary General on the margins of Davos, lots of details still being worked out on that, including with all of the stakeholders involved. I think Canada would be supportive. One of the reported pillars of that arrangement would be the launch of a new NATO exercise operation in the Arctic, which Canada is supportive of. And as one of the 7 Arctic states that are also members of NATO, we would certainly expect to play an active role in the planning of that operation should it come to fruition. But I would just say, first and foremost, we really agree with all of our allies that the Arctic is changing rapidly, that there are, as we've been talking about today, rapidly evolving threats to Canadian and allied interests in the region, and that we need to work together, all together, Arctic states through NATO as well, to secure the region and make sure that our interests are advanced.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn, Ms. Raminato. Mr. Kibble, we're running out of time. You may have maybe a minute or so if you want to ask a few questions.
I think we should ask for extension. I'm sure the witnesses
Well,
are
we do have
prepared
in
to-
camera afterwards, and I don't want to take up too much of that time, but if so be
I
it.
think we should
But
get the next round.
are we in concurrence at a
witnesses
few?
here and our expertise is here. This is important information.
Lead into our in-camera time. That's fine. Let's give another round to Mr. Kibble and to Mr. Watchorn, and then we'll call it.
Yep.
Okay. Thank
Sounds
you.
good.
Thank you very much,
5
Mr.
minutes.
Chair, and for the panel, for those Air Force and Coast Guard uniforms, both on the panel and in the audience today. Thank you for your service. Quickly, General, you mentioned sites, Cold Lake, Bagottville for F-35s. What forward operating sites are we looking for affecting intercepts, follow-on sites?
So, Mr. Chair, the forward operating locations are in Inuvik, Iqaluit, and Yellowknife, sorry, and Yellowknife, and we have deployed operating locations in Goose Bay and in Trenton and in Comox.
And we have timelines for those?
Well, they already exist, so it's really about...
To be ready for F-35s?
Oh, to be ready for, yes, we do. We have timelines that we're working on with our infrastructure colleagues.
Okay. Perhaps you could submit that later, those dates. Thank you very much. Mr. Quinn, a question for you. You mentioned integrated air and missile defense. You're referring to ballistic missile defense system.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not exactly. So the integrated air and missile defense is to recognize the fact that there are multiple different types of missile threats: cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, hypersonics,
right,
even
but the ballistic missile defense would
it would be
term is the same
encompassed
thing
within that.
effectively.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry,
Thank you.
Mr.
So do you
Chair.
feel that Canada should continue to participate, in a new ballistic missile defense? We've heard Golden Dome and other things thrown around. Is that something that we should continue to progress? And would F-35s be an integral part of that system to keep it effective, as we've heard about elsewhere? If you could speak to that briefly.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. As mentioned, we are already actively involved in the integrated air and missile defense of the continent through domain awareness and other assets. I think it's absolutely in Canada's interest to continue to play that role and to enhance our capabilities in that area, as was committed in the most recent defense policy. Fighter aircraft will absolutely be an integral part of that kind of layered system of systems to defend against evolving air and missile threats.
And specifically fifth generation that would have the capability to participate in that type of system?
On that, Mr. Chair, I would defer to General Spicer-Blanchette, who's
you.
more of an expert
General.
on the tech.
Mr. Chair, so the right fighter that can meet the current threats would be the correct answer to that. So in that case, it is the fifth generation, the F-35, that has already been evaluated and selected. It also includes the remotely piloted aircraft system, the Sky Guardian, the tankers that we're getting, airborne early warning and control that we are looking at acquiring. So there are multiple elements in the big system of systems
Thank you.
that contribute.
Complex integrated system. I appreciate that. One more very quick question for you. We know, as we discussed earlier, the North Warning System is scheduled to expire now, and it's still operating. But the planned Arctic over-the-horizon radars, are they going to be able to handle the aerial threat of hypersonic missiles for detection?
So that's a fair question. I think in terms of the details of what they will, we should probably come back to you with specific examples.
Thank you very much. Mr. O'Rourke, 2 years running, we've seen Chinese Coast Guard vessels operating in the Arctic. This year, the new Class 1 icebreaker Zulong was shadowed by Coast Guard, Canadian Coast Guard from Japan to Bering Sea. So just quickly exploring that within the framework of NORAD, can you tell us why they were tasked to shadow that vessel from Japan to the, Bering Sea to the Arctic?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. Just to note, they were not. In fact, we did not shadow the vessel. What happened is that the Sir Wilfrid Laurier was in Japan on other business and transiting to the Arctic, and essentially you had two ships that were essentially going from a similar point A to a similar point B, and that turned into a story that we were following. At this point in time, just getting back to my previous comments about Bill C-12, should that receive royal assent, we would then have the authority to be able to conduct those kinds of operations. That includes security patrols.
So nothing
at this
to do
point
with
in time,
shadowing.
we do not, and we did not shadow the vessel.
Okay, fair enough. There was news reports of that, so that's why I was asking. In terms of surveillance capability, you mentioned that the Coast Guard is looking at changing sensors. Surely, and now that we're integrated, there must be a more solid plan as to what capabilities, both for surveillance equipment, and if you could perhaps speak to that, and would that include air integrating into providing air search, because being forward deployed units, that would be a huge capability.
Yeah, thank you again, Mr. Chair, for the question. So at this point in time, we are in the midst of kind of doing an assessment of all of the capability. We do, of course, have capability on all of our ships today, and immediately any change or royal assent of C-12 will mean that we will be able to take that information that we currently collect and share it for security and defense purposes. But at the same time, we are working with our CAF partners to examine, as an example, what the RCN has on board, what might make sense on our Coast Guard vessels, and looking at the whole array of everything from the new ships that are under construction. Do we want to pivot all the way through our current vessels, and whether we may not, we may want to retrofit. So there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes. I'm not in a position today to give you specifics. I think things like air search radar are one of the many technologies that are currently being assessed and considered.
Fair enough.
Thank you, Mr. O'Rourke. Mr. Kibble,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm sensitive to our witnesses who have a prior engagement. So, Mr. Watchorn, the last 5 minutes is for you, and back to you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Merci à vous tous pour avoir témoigné aujourd'hui. Moi, j'aimerais explorer un peu la question des sous-marins. On va acquérir des sous-marins dans un avenir assez rapproché. Puis j'aimerais savoir comment que les sous-marins vont être intégrés à même les options qu'on a à NORAD. Ça peut être général.
Merci pour la question, Monsieur le Président. We unfortunately don't have a naval expert on the panel today, but what I would mention in response is that NORAD has a really important maritime warning function. So the more kind of platforms that Canada is contributing, whether it's surface assets, under surface assets such as submarines, uncrewed systems, sensors, the more we will be contributing to that maritime domain awareness picture, which is critically important to the NORAD maritime warning function.
Bon, ben merci. Si on continue, peut-être pas exactement dans la même veine, mais puisqu'on a M. O'Rourke ici, on va acquérir 2 icebreakers Polar Max dans un avenir rapproché. Comment que ces navires-là vont être utilisés à l'intérieur du contexte de NORAD?
Merci encore pour la question, Monsieur le Président. Alors, les 2 navires vont nous donner une capacité, une capacité qui est différente d'aujourd'hui. Alors, ils vont être capables, les 2 navires, d'opérer dans le Grand Nord 12 mois par année. Avec une petite note qu'il y a encore des discussions avec les Inuits qui utilisent la glace, qui est très important, mais je crois qu'il y a une façon d'opérer et ou protéger la glace utilisée par les habitants dans le Nord. Surtout, on aurait la capacité d'aller dans le haut Nord, si on veut, la haut Arctique. Les deux navires vont nous donner une capacité, des sensors, de voir qu'est-ce qui se passe d'une façon différente que tout le restant de qu'est-ce qu'on a parlé aujourd'hui. Alors, en effet, ces deux navires qui vont nous produire du Maritime Domain Awareness qui va être partagé possiblement avec nos partenaires sécurité et défense, comme on a mentionné tantôt.
OK. Puis, en continuant avec vous, M. O'Rourke, ce que je comprends, c'est que la garde côtière a des avions qui font de la surveillance au niveau des pêches, puis au niveau du Grand Nord, puis les côtes. Comment que ces vols-là vont nous permettre d'avoir encore plus d'informations pour nous protéger à l'intérieur de NORAD?
Mais justement, merci, M. le Président, pour la question encore une fois. Vous avez noté une capacité qui demeure toujours aujourd'hui avec le Transport Canada, mais que le gouvernement a annoncé sous peu va transférer à la Défense nationale et la garde côtière. Ça va nous permettre, en effet, avec les avions, les Dash 8, les Dash 8, de faire des vols, encore une fois, reliés à la C-12. Mais si la C-12 réussit, mais par la suite, même cet été, ça nous donnerait une capacité, une nouvelle capacité pour la Défense nationale de ramasser de l'information dans le Grand Nord.
Donc, d'où l'importance de passer C-12 rapidement. C'est ça que vous nous dites? Je ne vous demande pas de répondre. Merci beaucoup et je suis très conscient que vous avez un autre engagement aujourd'hui, donc je vais me limiter à ces questions-là aujourd'hui. Merci encore d'être venu au panel, puis merci de protéger notre pays.
Thank you very much. And I know you have a hard stop. I appreciate the witnesses coming before us. It was very enlightening. Folks, I'm going to suspend for a few minutes before we go to in camera. Thank you again, everyone.